My cousin's husband is trying to bang me, so I show my family all his creepy messages. I met my cousin's husband last July for their wedding. They live several states away, so in addition to meeting him for the first time, it was also the first time I'd seen my cousin in a few years. I instantly got a bad vibe from him, and he made several comments that rubbed me the wrong way. He told me that I seem like a wild child, and said he'd bet I'm a bad girl at my college. Since meeting him, he's followed me on Instagram and sporadically sends me reels, which I don't open, and comments odd things on my posts like, "Looking good, cousin." He even DM'd me once, "Hey, I'll be in your state this weekend on business. Lol." Which I never opened either. All of this definitely creeped me out, but I didn't feel like I could say anything about it because my cousin and I aren't close, and I've always felt like she looks down on me because she's a devout Christian and I am not. Fast forward to this week. One of those fake accounts on Instagram popped up with some of my pictures asking for money for X-rated pictures. The bio was in broken English, the pictures were poorly cropped screenshots of my two most recent posts, and the Cash App was a random string of numbers and letters. The account just looked very fake, and many of my friends sent it to me and reported the account. Of course, the one person who apparently fell for it was my cousin's husband. I then got a very long and nasty DM from my cousin telling me she had been very tolerant of my sinful lifestyle, but this time I had gone too far. Honestly, I wasn't sure what she meant by sinful life. I'm guessing she's making a lot of assumptions about me without really knowing anything about me. She said she didn't care that we were family, and so long as I was posing a threat to her marriage, I was no longer welcome in their lives. I calmly and politely responded that this account was not me, and that I'd already reported the account to Instagram to be taken down, and I apologized for the apparent disruption to her day. She responded that she didn't believe me and said she pities me for having such low self-esteem and would keep me in her prayers. I lost it at that point. I called her stupid for falling for an account that was so obviously fake, and said that her husband was such a blatant creep, it was embarrassing that she had even married him. I sent screenshots of the months of DMs from him that I'd never responded to, and concluded by saying, "If your marriage is so easily threatened, get a divorce. Don't take your insecurities out on me." Shortly after, I got angry phone calls from my mum and grandma, saying my cousin made an honest mistake and that my response was cruel and unjustified. Apparently, my cousin showed everyone our messages and is humiliated by what I said. After thinking more about it though, I do think the reason she spread it around the family is because she was paranoid that's what I was going to do, so she wanted to beat me to the punch so she could get ahead of it and control the narrative. I could be wrong though. My mum was worried about our relationship with that side of the family being permanently damaged, and now I may not be welcome at future family gatherings because my grandma doesn't want the drama. I really don't feel like my response was out of line, but since no one else agrees with me, I'm not so sure. So, am I the jerk? I never understand how so many of these stories seem to have the family come out on the side of the people who are being blatantly creepy or aggressive in the situation, and not the person who gets angry and calls them out on it. Maybe it's because you're a woman. Maybe it's because your cousin is more in line with the rest of their beliefs. Maybe because your cousin is better liked, so they'll tolerate her jerkery more than yours. In any case, I've got to say you're not the jerk here. Your creepy cousin ceaselessly spammed you trying to start a conversation that you clearly didn't want to have, and then apparently paid money to try and get lewd material of you for his own enjoyment. Also, even if the account was of the author, how can you go on the attack against the party that your partner paid money to for his own gratification, rather than getting angry at him for being unfaithful in the first place? You'd think showing the chats of this man just endlessly trying to solicit you would mean him being called out by the entire family. Nope, it seems like they've just decided that this good man was tempted to sin by this awful woman who drew out his lust by existing? Also, what's with the cousin saying that she was humiliated by all of this? She was the one who showed the entire family. The mental gymnastics of this family are something else. It's too bad we don't have a section for that at the Olympics. They could sweep all the medals. Block my promotion? I'll end your careers. So I serve as an EMT in my community, and I've been at this particular department for the past 10 years. I currently serve as its first lieutenant. Now, the next rank is deputy chief. This is something I'd been working towards for years. Years of training and experience brought me to the point where I'm eligible for this rank. Not only that, but I'm coming up to a military review board hearing where my community service is going to be a factor if I'm approved in upgrading my status and being eligible for Reserve Officers Training Corps and re-entering the military. Holding the rank of deputy chief would certainly be a plus to the board. Now, the current chief and deputy chief happen to be married. The deputy chief has in the past year had back surgery. It's been discussed that due to this, she probably shouldn't continue on in her position. She would abstain from re-election for 2018 and allow me to take her place. If she doesn't run, I'm literally the only other person qualified to hold the position, apart from the chief. Her and I have discussed this at length, and she's very aware of how important it is to me. Finally, we come to elections. I suppose you can guess where this is going. After almost a year of planning, discussing, and promising, at the last minute she's nominated by her husband, accepts the nomination, and is elected, beating me by only a few votes. I sat there fuming. The chief and deputy chief wouldn't even look at me. After as much as it meant to me, the help it would have given me with the military board, the years put in, they effed me. They didn't offer any explanation afterwards. I really stopped talking to them after the election, and they didn't reach out. We were actually pretty friendly too. We had called to shoot the breeze, grab dinner, whatever. Then, nothing. I don't know what they were looking to gain by it. She was physically unable to do the job, but who knows? I was going to get back at them, so I started looking for dirt. After about a month, I found my smoking piece. I'll save you the long and boring story of how I came to find this, but I will say I looked through a great many call reports and talked to the right people. Remember when I mentioned the deputy chief had surgery? Well, she was on disability from her paid job at the telecom company for several months. Also, being on and collecting disability there, she couldn't ride with the squad. Well, I found reports where her name was present, over and over. But the strange thing was, some reports had her signature as I know it, and others were clearly forged. Where I live, in order for an ambulance call to be billable to insurance, the ambulance needs to be staffed by 2 EMTs. You can still roll an ambulance without 2 EMTs, but you can't bill insurance for it. I investigated this and learned that the chief had been signing his wife's signature on calls he took with only 1 EMT. So it appeared 2 had been there. The dates, however, coincide with when she was still in recovery, physically unable to be there. Additionally, I learned that while she was still recovering, she did take a number of calls while still collecting disability from her desk job at the telecom company. Not only was her husband, the chief, committing insurance fraud, billing insurance by forging her signature, she too was committing disability fraud. There was evidence for days. I had what I needed. So on to my revenge. I met with the department attorney and presented my evidence. Together, we contacted the State Department of Health, which governs our ability to bill. We contacted our billing company, and we contacted the deputy chief's employer. Both the chief and deputy chief's EMT certifications have been suspended pending outcome to the DOH's investigation. I'm told that one or both will have their certifications revoked. The deputy chief has been terminated from her job for defrauding the company on disability. The deputy chief must pay back every dime she collected from disability while she was on it. They've both been terminated from our department. This has also resulted in my promotion to acting chief until a special election next month, for which I'm the only one qualified to run for chief. The dominoes are still falling, but they're both looking at criminal charges. The fraud amounted to over 40 grand worth of billing to insurance companies. Her disability paid over 60K. I do feel a little bad, but at the end of the day, no one forced them to commit fraud. They were livid when we were firing them. They tried claiming we didn't have enough evidence, that they've been selflessly serving for years, that we couldn't do this to them, might well have been in denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. In short, chief and deputy chief went back on their word to allow me to be elected to deputy chief. I discovered they were committing fraud and reported them. They've been kicked off our department, one fired from her job, and likely criminal charges. I'm the chief now. Am I the jerk? Well, I've never particularly liked the stories where someone goes so far out of their way to destroy another person's life, but honestly, this is one of the times where you have to ask, if it can be destroyed by the truth, doesn't it deserve to be destroyed by the truth? I do actually think there are one or two exceptions to that rule, but in this case, these two individuals had kind of passively stepped on so many people and defrauded some organizations from money that's meant to go towards helping people in need. They broke the law, and then they gave someone a very good reason to come after them and find out about their misdeeds. Their reaction would suggest that they felt entitled to the money they took, which is just really crappy. And I can't really call the author a villain for finding the valid reasons to put them in prison after how badly they screwed him, after the way they just pulled the rug out from under your feet after building you up for so long. And it looks like you went from being in the running for deputy chief to being in charge of the whole shebang. I'm sure it was quite a bit of work to find a deputy, since it sounds like you were the only 3 candidates and no one else was qualified, but hey, you would have looked great in any future board hearings. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for leaving my best friend and his friends stranded in an unfamiliar city? So, for background, my best friend has gotten into going to these Spartan races. He and a small group of his friends have started going to the local ones, but recently heard about one in another state they wanted to go to and compete in, but they didn't have anywhere to stay. So they asked me if they could borrow my truck and trailer, I have a tow-behind camper, just for one weekend. I said no, I wasn't comfortable with them taking my truck and trailer, but that I'd drive them and the camper to their event. We made the 3-hour trip and set everything up in the area where the race was taking place the next day. I have a habit of leaving my keys on a hook next to the door to my bedroom in my camper. Remember this. Come nightfall, I went to take a phone call outside and ended up wandering around the grounds for over an hour. When I got back to the camper, the door was locked, and I was told by my best friend's older friend through the window that there wasn't enough room for me in my trailer. So I reached for my keys to unlock the door, but I realized I'd left them inside the camper on the hook next to my room. So I called my best friend from outside, and all I was told was, "Sorry bro, nothing I can do." So I ended up sleeping in my truck that night, which I'd fortunately left unlocked by accident. Their race began at 8 a.m, and at 7 they came meandering out of the trailer and woke me up. No apology, by the way. So while they were in their race, I hooked my truck back up to the trailer, closed and locked everything, and waited until just after they finished and had started walking back to the trailer. Think a really wide open field. When I saw them coming, I started the truck and drove off the property, with them chasing behind. I made the 3-hour trip back home, declining call after call. When I finally got home, I finally took my best friend's call. He started yelling at me, saying, "Why would you do this? We have no way home now." I just said, "Sorry, you shouldn't have made me sleep in my truck after I did you this massive solid." He told me that there were better ways to handle this than by leaving them in an unfamiliar city with no way home. I think he ended up calling his dad to come and get them. Is he right? Was there a better way to handle this? I felt justified until he said that. I'm kind of doubting my decision now. Am I the jerk? Well, why didn't the Spartan warriors run home then? What a hilarious bunch of deluded jerks. Why in the ungrateful frick were they so okay with completely screwing the guy who had done them a massive favor of taking them all out there in the first place, and giving them a place to stay? There may well have been a better way to deal with this from their perspective, but from yours, why on earth would you have wanted to treat them well after they behaved like a bunch of entitled and selfish children? Any other way might have resulted in them deciding that what they'd done was fine? If you had just settled for scolding them all the way home, I'm 100% certain they would have just laughed in your face and joked about it amongst themselves every other time you saw them. You're fine, they're idiots, and you deserve an apology. My mother thinks she's entitled to one of my properties. Lol. I haven't seen my mother since I was 16, and we were in court. So 19 years later, I hadn't made any contact with my mother. She hired a PI to find me, and I still refuse to talk to her. I even have my lawyer send her a formal letter of no contact and threatened her with a restraining order. She sent this email to me through my work email. I've shortened it, but basically it said, "To insert name here, this is, mother's name, your mother. I thought you'd have matured by now and come and apologized to me and your father for what you put us through. Because of you, father lost his teaching career and we had to sell our house. However, it's come to my knowledge that you own some properties in my area, so it's only right if you give us one of them as an apology." They named my most expensive property, would be a good fit for us. As soon as you hand over the keys to that property, we can finally be able to start to heal and get past this little misunderstanding that you blow out of proportion. I hope you come to the right decision. Signed, Mother. I just can't stop laughing at this. Like, no, witch, I'm not giving you anything. This is just another bit of evidence to help me get the restraining order against her. Update: she was arrested. I have 3 properties. The first property I ever bought and now rent out. The big house near water, aka my forever home. The apartment I bought from my auntie after my uncle died. Properties 2 and 3 were not my biggest worries because my mother would only be annoying family, but 1 is rented out to a lovely couple and they don't deserve to be dragged into this mess. Can you guess which one she showed up to? She showed up there and tried to evict my great tenants with a fake eviction notice. She told the girls that she was my mother and that I gave her authority to evict them. However, I already gave the girls a warning about my mother, and if she tried anything, to first call the police and then me. They did exactly as I said. When I got there, my mother was trying to convince the police that I gave authority to evict them, and that I was lying to them to get her in trouble because of an argument we'd had. But for someone who allegedly hired a PI to find me, she put down the wrong name on those forms. She didn't know that I took my husband's last name. So, she was arrested and I have a temporary restraining order on her and she's not to come near me or any of my properties. As for my father, I told my sister that if she got my father's therapist's number, I'd give it to my therapist so they can discuss further about possibly maybe having a conversation with him, but only when my therapist and I believe I'm ready. I thought my father would fight me and demand that I see him, but he didn't. He agreed to everything and told my sister that he'd understand if I never feel ready to see me. On a lighter note, my coping methods for stress are building and/or fixing things. So I converted my old garage into a D&D gaming room for my husband's birthday. And I got me a happy ending if you know what I mean. That's it, I'll update it if other things happen. Update 2. I'd first like to thank you all for the hugs, well wishes, and rewards. I truly didn't believe that so many people would see my little story, let alone leave comments. I'm not going to lie to you all, it gave me a bit of an ego boost. Secondly, I'm in a really good place in my life. What happened between me and my parents was over 20 years ago, and though I'll probably never be over it, I am happy. Now on to the update. Guess who's online and just so happened to see my post? I got another email from her demanding an apology for making her look bad on social media. She's now given us a deadline to hand over the keys to my house. I forgot to tell you all the most expensive property I own is my family's home, the one my husband and stepkids live in. But she's willing to compromise and take the apartment that I bought from my auntie. Oh, and I'm supposed to let my younger sister, who I've never met, use my 2-bedroom apartment for free. I mean, after reading my post and seeing over 600 comments about how crazy and entitled she is, she still thinks she's in the right. Emailing me on my work email and leaving fake reviews online, she left 2, with her actual name? These have all given me more evidence for that restraining order, so I guess I should be thanking her for making it so easy for me. After talking with my husband, we thought it was a bit weird for her to go 0 to 60 with the crazy, and when I voiced my concerns to the rest of the family, I was told she was diagnosed with schizophrenia over 40 years ago, and no one thought to tell me or my siblings. I don't know much about schizophrenia, but I believe it's inherited, right? This is something you tell your children. I think my mother's family were trying to get me to sympathize with her, but I just dislike her more now. She withheld important information that could affect us. I don't have any biological kids, but my older brother and sister do. I'm just so angry right now. Update 3. Apparently she claims to have had a mental breakdown after finding out that her husband was cheating on her. So the Crown has decided not to proceed with the charges, but the protection order will be left in place. So there's that, I guess. She's committed herself to a mental facility, and that's it. Really, she can't come near me, my family, or our properties. I've also decided to sell the apartment to my tenants. They've been looking for a place to purchase, and when I told them I was thinking of selling, they jumped at the chance and we're in the middle of negotiations. And that's it. Here's hoping for another 19 years of no contact. Final update. My mother is dead. My mother and I were far from close. We haven't talked to each other in person for nearly 20 years. I despised my mother, so I don't know why I feel so awful about it. She's made my life hell in the last couple of months. I should feel relieved that she's dead, but I don't. I feel disappointed and a little mad. Okay, this was a wild ride from start to finish and ended on a really melancholy note. And I don't imagine that what you're feeling isn't unusual for someone with your complicated relationship with your family. I don't think any of us want to have our families hate us, even if some people realize that it's in their best interest to cut them out of their lives. Given the choice, I'm sure that everyone would have loved to have squared up everything and reached an understanding, got apologies for past wrongdoings before they died, and be left with only the good memories. Not so here. I think in the end it just sounds like your mother was just kind of desperate and mentally ill. A sad ending, really. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.